Welcome to Shelf Help, a channel dedicated to talking to the void about whatever book I happen to be reading. I'm your host, the reader. The following review will contain spoilers. The lots are a stretch of land between the human kingdom of Hispartha and the sea. Beyond the sea is the land of orcs. Orcs who would like nothing more than to invade and burn Hispartha to the ground, just because they can. Again. Not so long ago they did just that, but were driven back by human will, by the humans' half-orc slaves, and disease. In return for their help, the slaves were freed and given the lots. They are charged with keeping the orcs at bay. That was generations ago, but the orcs are still coming. Despite this dangerous work, a half-orc cannot be a free citizen of Hispartha. Only on the lots do they have any say over their own lives. Jackal is the main character of this riotous jaunt. He is charismatic, ambitious, and streetwise. Lot-wise, I guess. Like many half-orcs, he was abandoned in the lots as a baby, and never knew either parent. He grew up to become a member of a hoof, a group who protect their lots from the orcs, under the leadership of the Claymaster, an older half-orc still suffering from the plague that ended the war and one of the original freed slaves. He fights alongside his friend Oates, a 3/4 orc, and Fetching, the first ever female member of any hoof. Oates is his brother in every way but blood. He is the muscle to Jackal's brain, and they have each other's back 100% of the time, even when they don't agree. They are on each other's side. His relationship with Fetching is a little more complicated. Like Oates, they were raised together, but she had no interest in being a bedwarmer, like every other female half-orc under the protection of the hoof. He and Oates teach her everything they know, and once made part of the hoof, they support her inclusion. But he doesn't see her as a sister the way he sees Oates as a brother. Yet they're still friends. Both of these are very healthy relationships, and I enjoy good friendship relationship in fiction that doesn't turn either competitive or into love. While Jackal and Fetching do express that they have feelings later, those feelings don't get in the way of their goals. Fetching never turns into a damsel in distress in need of saving. In fact, she would kick Jackal's teeth in just for the suggestion. I like her. By any measure, Jackal is living the best life any half-orc could ask for. But he wants more. He wants to lead. And when a wizard comes along, he sees a way to usurp the Claymaster. Life rarely works out the way we plan. He finds himself learning everything he thought he knew was wrong. If you find yourself in possession of delicate sensibilities, this book probably isn't for you. It is bawdy, crude, rowdy, irreverent, and proudly politically incorrect. There are words in this book I can't say without being preemptively and permanently barred from any chance of monetization. And I love it. Just as an example, the first chapter we have 2 suggestions that someone should love their horse just a little bit too much. While this was absolutely tonal whiplash after the classic epic fantasy of Malice, it is perfect for the setting of this book. The characters in this story are a generation, maybe 2, removed from slavery. They have no formal education and no need for it. Their lives revolve around fighting orcs that are trying to invade the human kingdom of Hispartha. And they are in love with life. They are free in a way most half-orcs could only dream of being. These aren't noble characters spouting ideas about greater good. They aren't prophesied chosen ones, nor are they trying to save the world. They aren't even trying to change the world, at least not in this book. They just want to save the lots and their way of life. The lots is a wasteland. It costs the humans nothing to give it to them. Theoretically, the lots were handed out by luck of the draw, but all the best lots went to the elves, who incidentally were the humans' allies during the Orc War. No funny business there, I'm sure. There's also a lot occupied by halflings and their retainers. I'll get back to them. There are a few lots occupied by centaurs, or as the half-orcs love calling them, horse roosters. They don't come out much, mostly keeping to their temples. But when the betrayer moon rises, they go on a killing spree. It's a religious thing. I suspect they're followers of Dionysus. Granted, we only see them from the point of view of those they're slaughtering, so perhaps it's not an unbiased view. The last lot is protected by only one person, the Sludge Man. He lives in the Old Maiden Marsh, which he patrols, using possibly living semi-sentient sludge. He's nuts, and powerful. I mean, he defends a whole lot on his own. But powerful and crazy are a dangerous combination. Fantasy as a genre loves its world-shattering events. Characters are often drawn to political, international, or even divine conflicts. They find themselves chosen or somehow pivotal to events well beyond their ken. There's the beginnings of that here, even if this story is more localized. Jackal makes a blind bargain that is definitely going to bite him in the ass. This is where the halflings come in. When Jackal breaks his arm while saving an elf from the Sludge Man, he seeks out a magical cure. The only place to get that is the halflings. The head priest does offer to fix his arm, on the condition of his aid when their god returns to smite the orcs. Jackal thinks the religion is bullshit, and even if it isn't, odds are he'll be long dead before he has to keep that promise. We all know how that's going to work out for him. It's hard not to contrast this with Malice, having read them back to back. But what stands out more than anything is that they have the same theme: courage and truth. In Malice, it's a creed. It is preached. Good people do the right thing, consequences be damned, because it's the right thing to do. The Grey Bastards doesn't preach. No one tells Jackal to save the elf girl from the Sludge Man. The elves aren't their allies, even if they aren't active enemies either. The Sludge Man, on the other end, is an ally, at least to the Claymaster. Corbin was chosen, raised from birth to see the world in a certain light. Jackal does not have that luxury. Jackal does not spend time debating morality. Monologuing in this book would be terribly out of place. He sees a person in need, and he helps them without regard for who they are. Likewise, no one tells him to give up his feelings for fetching, so that she can have her dream. She can't be his bedwarmer and a member of the Hoof. He never brings it up, he never makes her feel bad for her choice, and he never abandons her, even when it seems she has abandoned him. I love my epic fantasy with its high concepts and world-shattering events. But stories with smaller scope often have more impact. These characters are a generation or two removed from slavery, imposed on them for the way they were born. They are free with the caveat that they live in a certain area of poor quality land, doing a dangerous job that has more benefit for their former masters than it does for them. I hope I don't need to spell that out for anyone. In light of recent events, I need to talk about the elephant in the room. I don't generally talk about this sort of thing because I believe all stories should be able to stand on their own. However, I would be remiss not to address it. Orcs were created as a racist stereotype. They are a dark-skinned, tribal, low-intelligent, brutish savages from a faraway land with a guttural, undulating language whose only goal is to make war on the fairer races of elves and men. And when they aren't making war for war's sake, they are the dumb muscle of a greater evil. That's not to say that things have not improved. Over the years, D&D has made strides to be more inclusive, and orcs can now be playable as any player class. Fantasy as a whole is moving away from using them solely as evil minions as well. Jackal, Fetching, and Oates all run counter to the stereotype. Jackal is smart, kind, and willing to help anyone in need. Fetching is driven and stubborn and easily the best fighter in the book. Oates, while not as smart as the other two, has a huge heart and loves children, especially those with disadvantages. Stereotypes paint with a broad brush. They exist to other those who do not fit a predefined mold. That's not to say that the use of stereotypes is inherently racist. Both the orcs and humans are nebulous enemies in this story. We don't see a point of view from outside of the lots, so there's no opportunity for nuance and growth in either case. I say all that to say this. The full-blood orcs in this story are the stereotype. Full stop. And this is where authorial intent and reader interpretation meet, and things can get a little slippery. Was it intended that the fully developed characters with individual motives would fight and kill the stereotypes they were descended from? Or am I reading that into it based on my own knowledge and events surrounding this moment in history? Would someone else see it the same? It's hard to say. The humans aren't the good guys here either. To them, half-orcs are slaves. Little more than livestock, only more disposable. In the beginning, we are told the lots were created for freed slaves who, when their human masters were routed, took up weapons and fought. That, it turns out, left a lot of ugly details out. Even then, decades after the war, half-orcs are still sold into slavery, most often by their mothers. Those on the lots are free only so long as they do a dangerous job that has more benefit for their former masters than it does for them. While the parallel here is obvious, I would like to firmly state this is not a story about the black experience. Even my pasty white southern-born female self knows that. This is fantasy, drawing on real themes and events in history to craft compelling narrative. Here's the thing. Just because something starts out as racist does not mean it can't change and grow. But that doesn't mean we should ignore its heritage. I don't know where we will be at the time of this recording, but at the time I'm writing this, Minneapolis is burning, because a white police officer put his knee on the neck of black man, George Floyd, for nearly 9 minutes. Fantasy is a genre of heroes, ordinary people who find themselves in extraordinary times. They don't set out to save the world, they want to protect their family, friends, and community. None of us are going to face an eldritch horror in single combat for the fate of the world. However, walking from your home in the middle of a pandemic to put your body on the line for a neighbor against an armed and armored agent given license to use deadly force for minor infractions when you have personally nothing to gain, that is what real courage looks like. I'm going to put this on my top shelf. Orcs in fantasy have a troubled history. They were built as a racist stereotype, even though in recent years we've made great strides to change that. These characters aren't noble. They do a brutal job in a savage land, but they are neither brutes nor savages. Despite the crass veneer, this story has a lot of heart. It's about home and family through shed blood rather than shared. It's about making the most of life even when the odds are against you. Jackal's nobility isn't about his birth or being chosen, but in the choices he makes. He's willing to fight and die and give up his own dreams to keep safe those he loves and for what he knows to be right. This book isn't going to be for everyone. The language and imagery are vulgar, but is one of the most honest stories I've read in a while. Thank you for your time. I know everyone's mileage will vary. Please feel free to leave your thoughts.